Today we are going to look at the Apostle James today. And the last time we spoke was 2 weeks ago, and that was the Apostle Peter. And we looked at Peter's origins. We looked at when he was called by Jesus. We looked at his journey with Jesus during his 3-year ministry. And then we looked at what happened after to Peter, after Christ ascended. And he had the huge impact upon the church of anyone. And then we looked at his death in Rome. And today we're going to look at James. And
I don't know if the Wi-Fi here zapped it or something.
I gotcha.
Okay.
So we're looking at James, and he is known as the son of Zebedee. And he is most likely born in Galilee, which is near Capernaum, very similar to Peter. And James, as remember, there's 12 disciples. We're going to look at, do an overview of, and remember, there's 2 Jameses. Okay, there's James, son of Zebedee, and he is known as James the Greater. Okay, and he's distinguished from the other James. And there's the other James that we don't know too much about, but he's known as James the Less. And when we say James the Less, it's not insignificance, but he's more younger or shorter. Okay, James, his father was Zebedee, who was a fisherman, and his mother was Salome. Okay, and she, the mother of James and John. So remember, we'll get to the family right now. The mother of Salome, the mother of James, was present during the time of Christ, and she was there during the crucifixion. For instance, Mark 15:40 says, "There were also women looking on from a distance, among whom were Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, the younger, and Hostess, and Salome." Okay, so one of the women went to anoint, and she was also one of the women that anointed the body of Christ in Mark chapter 16, verse 1. Okay, so again, she was there during the crucifixion, and there is a speculation, I believe the Roman Catholic Church believes this, but that James and John, they're brothers, but James and John are cousins with Jesus. Okay, and the reason why there's cousins with Jesus is just from this one verse, John chapter 19, verse 25. It's the same, the parallel to when they were at the cross. Says, "By standing by the cross of Jesus were his mother and his mother's sisters." See that? Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. So that part, and his mother's sisters, because it's also in Matthew's Gospel and Mark chapter 15, the end of it where it says Salome was present. So then you put John chapter 19, verse 25, people will say, well, the Salome and Mary, the mother of Christ, were sisters, which implies that John, James, and Jesus were cousins. Okay? So, and I think when you look into it, it's kind of like when you look into it, it's kind of like there was a special relationship with the 3 of them. Obviously Peter was there too, but when Jesus, James, and John, like there was a kind of like, it says John we're going to look at next week, but where he says he loved them most, right? And it's we're going to get into the passage later on as far as like the closeness or the intimacy with all of them. Okay, so it's the way it works. So remember, John and James are brothers. Okay, John, the guy who wrote the Gospel of John, 1 John, 2 John, 3 John, and then James, okay, they're brothers. Okay, now their profession were fishermen. Now, the way it goes is remember Peter, who we studied last time, is brothers with Andrew. Okay, so there's Andrew, his brother was Peter, and there's John, his brother was James. And they worked together in a business in the Sea of Galilee. And the way it goes is Jesus first encountered Andrew. Andrew told Peter. Peter told James and John. And then they went to Christ. Okay, so they were fishermen. This was their occupation, just like Peter. Okay, they all worked together, and the implication is they had a successful business, a successful fishing business together. Okay, and they're known as the sons of thunder. Okay, in Mark chapter 13, verse 17, I showed you guys. I don't know if you guys watched it, but the video of the chosen, right? And they're known in the Arabic. It's known as it says James. I'll read Mark chapter 3, verse 17. Says James, the son of Zebedee, and his brother John, to whom is given the name Boanerges. That is the sons of thunder, and Boanerges is in Aramaic, which means sons of thunder. Okay, and we'll get into why they're called the sons of thunder. Okay, and a little fierce. So essentially, this is the background of James the apostle. Okay, son of Zebedee. Brother of John, and his mom was Salome, and apparently he is the cousin of Jesus Christ. Okay. What's that, Trish?
Ruben, I have a question because I was confused today.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at the book of James, and the book of James is the story of the brother of Jesus. It said half brother in my Bible.
Yes.
His mother was Mary and Joseph were his father.
Yes.
And he really became a Christian after Jesus resurrected.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he's not really one of the apostles, and he's not James the Lesser. He just happens to have a book in the Bible.
Yeah. So there's three. Remember, there's James the Less, but he's another disciple. Then there's James,
Right.
son of Zebedee. This is the disciple. But then there's the James, the brother of Jesus. So there's three.
Okay, I guess I didn't. Well,
Yeah.
I just assumed that the James, the book in the Bible, would be James, the brother of John, but it isn't.
Right.
So
Right. No. No, and thank you for that clarification, because I wasn't going to mention that, but James, the book of James, is written by the brother of Christ, and obviously
Okay.
they say half brother because Joseph did not give birth.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's purely Mary. So James.
At the crucifixion, then it said, so John and his brother James were there, or Jesus' brother James was there?
John was there, and we'll get into that next week.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get into that. So John was there, and we know that from John's gospel. But again, James was all his brothers were unbelievers, all of them during his earthly ministry. It doesn't say why. It could be envy. I suppose, like in the sense of the whole proximity. We talked about the emotion or the disordered sin of envy, like Cain and Abel, Joseph and his brothers. Like there's always that sibling rivalry. The sons of David. There's always this, just throughout history. It's just human nature. Where we envy those in proximity. I don't know. I can't use the Bible and say, well, it was because of envy, but we do know that they were unbelievers. I'm throwing that up there in the sense of like Jesus is the most written person in ancient history, like by far. So like it's communicated, like it's the assumption. This is from John's gospel that he did way more miracles than we know, much more miracles in the 3 years, and his fame and his honor was really spread throughout that culture. And imagine the brothers who were all unbelievers, but then it was something happened after the resurrection of Christ. So we know from Acts chapter 15, he became a leader of the church. The brother, not this James, but the brother of Jesus became one of the leaders of the church of Jerusalem. And then he wrote the book of James. So I think James 1:1, it says like a servant of Jesus Christ, not a brother of Jesus. So it's pretty remarkable stuff.
It's a very short
Yeah, 5 chapters. Yeah. But yes, James is not written by this James. It's written by the brother of Jesus. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So now, when he was called by Jesus, okay, when he was called by Jesus, can someone read Matthew 4:18 to 22? Matthew 4:18 to 22. This is our first time doing a Bible study, all audio. I can't see him. So,
While walking by the Sea of Galilee, he saw 2 brothers, Simon, who was called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea, where they were fishermen. And he said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." Immediately they left their nets and followed him. And going on from there, they saw 2 other brothers, James, the son of Zebedee, and John, his brother, in the boat with Zebedee, their father, mending their nets. And he called them. Immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him.
okay. So here we have the immediacy, the immediate obedience from James and John, which really reveals a trust that they had in him, where it says in verse 22, immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him. So this is kind of, it shows their trust in the caller, that is Jesus, their surrender of security, meaning a boat, their father, it says, their livelihood. So if you owned a boat, it means like there was some form of success that they had. And faith in a greater purpose other than being a fisherman. This was their occupation. This is how they lived. So it's kind of very similar to Abraham in Genesis 12, where it says that so Abraham went and the Lord told him and he followed, right? So like James, he left everything that he was familiar with Abraham for a future built on a particular call. Okay, so Jesus, very similar, often calls us, wherever we're at, out of our comfort zones. And it's a high calling to follow him. And notice the way that James and John responded in comparison to, say, the rich man in Luke chapter 9, where he says, "Come follow me." And then he was very half-hearted. Or there was a man, he says, let me first bury my father. Or let me first say farewell, right? There was that half-heartedness that that Jesus confronted this person. So essentially, true discipleship means saying yes to Christ without any conditions. There's no delay or a sense of distraction. Okay, so again, this really reveals our heart as far as the immediacy. And remember, this is a time where Jews were looking upon their Messiah, looking for a Messiah, but not the Messiah that Christ presented himself to be, because they wanted a conquering Jew, a conquering Messiah, right? So this is the this is when they were first called by Jesus here in Matthew chapter 4. Okay, now. His journey, James's journey with Jesus and his disciples. Okay, remember, Jesus had 3. Remember, there's 12 disciples, but there was 3 inner disciples, three close ones, and we talked about this last time. But remember, the way we're going to go about this is first Peter, and then we're doing James, and then next week we're doing John. So the implication is these were the closest ones to Christ. Okay, and we know that from certain specific events. So we know this from the raising of Jairus' daughter in Mark chapter 5. We know this from the transfiguration, okay, of when Jesus brought them on a mountain, and in a split second, he was in his glorified form, and all of a sudden they saw Peter, they saw Elijah, and they saw Moses. Okay, and then the third instance is the prayer of Gethsemane. Okay, so only the three of them were with Christ at that very vulnerable, very crucial moment. Okay, now some of the passages. Sorry, did someone have a question? No. Some of the passages that James, in particular, is emphasized. We're going to look at it right now. But can we all turn to Mark chapter 10? Mark chapter 10. And then we're going to look at verse 35 to 40. Mark chapter 10, verse 35 to 40. If someone could read that out loud. Mark chapter 10, verse 35 to 40.
And James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to him. Teacher, they said, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. What do you want me to do for you? He asked. They replied, that one of us sit at your right and the other sit at your left in your glory. You don't know what you are asking, Jesus said. Can you drink the cup I drink or be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with? We can, they answered. Jesus said to them, you will drink the cup I drink and be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with. But to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those whom they have been prepared.
So I think we're all familiar with this passage, right? What comes to mind when you read this? When you hear about a request like that?
Well, you don't make a request of Jesus or God. You know, I want you to do what we want you to do for us, whatever we ask you.
Yeah.
No. You can ask, but we want you to do, you do it.
Yeah.
You know, you're in control.
Well, verse 37, grant us to sit, one at your right hand and one on your left, in your glory. Like, what does that scream to you?
They want position.
They want some honor. They want some position. They want some glory, right? Now, why do you think they're asking for this?
Because they're human beings and they want to be cool.
Yeah. Trish, you said something?
I think they knew they were special.
Ah.
I think they realized they weren't as special as they thought they were.
Well, I don't know this. Some people suggest this, but do you think it has anything to do with that they were cousins of Jesus?
Sure.
Right, nepotism.
Sure.
Right? A lot of us don't see that, but again, like it doesn't say, but I'm asking why, so if you think of it, for us, when we read into Jesus and his ministry, we obviously read it in the context of him being humble, right? Because we see, but remember, they're in the moment, and Jews looking forward to the Messiah, they perceive that it would be an actual physical kingdom, that the Messiah would actually rule and take over the Roman Empire and free the Jews, right? But it'd be an actual kingdom, and then Christ would rule, or the Messiah would rule, right? So it's kind of a bold claim to make from them, but again, you could see the thirst for honor, you could see the thirst for glory from James and John in this passage, right? Very bold, and I think a lot of people would want the same thing, I think a lot of people would want the exact same thing, but are maybe too afraid, maybe too shy to say it, right? But they just go and say it, right?
Well, I think they basically like they want to have Jesus's platform.
Yeah.
So it's like in a digital age, like people want Jesus's platform. Like I have millions of followers, and people are all looking up to me because I'm with the Savior of the world. And I don't know. I feel like there's just some sort of like pride bone that needs to get tickled. Or just like, yeah.
I got a question.
Yeah, Danny.
Yeah, I'm 40. It says, but to sit at my right hand or at my left is not mine to grant, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared. What does that mean?
So we'll get into that later, okay? But it's in conjunction to verse 39. And they said, we are able, and Jesus says, the cup that I drink, you will drink. And with the baptism which I am baptized, you will be baptized. So there is a correlation with martyrdom, suffering, and those who receive future glory. Okay? In all the book of Revelation, all in the New Testament, there is this correlation between martyrdom and future glory. Okay? And we're going to see the persecution, we're going to see the martyrdom of James later on. Okay? So they're requesting this. James is requesting this. I want to sit right beside you. I want to be right beside the king. I don't want people to see me. Right? That's essentially, right? Now, okay, there you have this desire for this glory, but he reverses it. He redefines what glory is. Okay, verse 38 to 45. It says, let me read 41. And when the 10 heard it, they began to be indignant at James and John. Okay, and Jesus called to them and said to them, you know those who are considered rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and the great ones exercise authority over them. But it shall be so among you. But whoever would be great among you must be a servant, and whoever would be first among you must be a slave of all. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. So he changes the definition of greatness. Okay, he completely he redirects it from glory to suffering. Okay, from ruling to being a servant, from self-promotion to self-sacrifice. So he completely changes. Again, we'll get into it. We'll see how James, particular, because we're doing James today, not John. We're doing James, how he responds. It's so funny because we'll get into this later, but James is the first disciple to be martyred out of all of them, and John is the last. Okay, and actually John probably is the only one that probably never got martyred. He just died. All of them died by being a martyr, by persecution, and James is the first. So there's a fulfillment that James has with this passage right here. Okay. Any questions?
You're saying this James, the son of Deb, he's the first one to be martyred?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Out of the 12. And the only one documented in the Bible. Yeah. So, as we stated last week, 2 weeks ago, is that Peter was martyred, but the martyr, like look at all the church fathers that I quoted last week. Right. The only passage we have of Peter being martyred is John chapter 21, and then Jesus foretells of Peter's death. Okay, but it's not explicitly mentioned. It's all the church fathers that mention in history, and St. Peter's Basilica, and like we have the bones of St. Peter today. But James is documented in Scripture, the only apostle to be documented in the Bible of being killed. Okay, so remember, there is an ambition that is inside the heart of James. Ambition isn't necessarily evil unless it's self-centered. Okay, and here it's kind of self-centered. Okay, and what Jesus does is he doesn't discourage that ambition, but he redirects it towards a status of service. Okay, because greatness, true honor comes through service. Okay, if you look at the figures before Christ, their greatness was considered you're putting yourself first. If you look at guys like Julius Caesar, died in 44 AD. Well, it's funny. James dies in 44 AD. This guy. So Julius Caesar died in 44 years before Christ. But again, he was that general, that figure of greatness. That obviously the Caesars took his name and became the Caesar. If you look at Alexander the Great, there's a concept of greatness that men, people have it, but I think men struggle with it more. That there's an honor issue, that they have to achieve some sense of like grand accomplishment. Kill the giant, King David, rule, lead the army, right? Have some giant invention that you're going to change the world, to really convince themselves of their own worth. Because remember, every single human being, due to the fall, subconsciously deals with insignificance. All of us do. That's a disordered state. Okay, with an aligned heart by nature with God, is in a proper stance of honor, significance. We don't have to prove to ourselves, but because of the fall, there's this desire that we now have to prove ourselves our own worth. So men do certain things to prove themselves. Women have to do certain things to prove themselves, right? And it's not the best. Okay, it's not the best. I hate to bring a nasty illustration, but like look at OnlyFans, on Instagram with girls in it. Like it's a lot of it is a plea for honor, a plea to prove their own worth. And we've never seen this in human history, by the way. What I say in human history is like polygamy was always a thing, meaning men had multiple women, right? It's just a fact of history. You look at the Old Testament, and it's just all polygamy, right? But then now in the 21st century, it's the only time documented where a woman could have multiple men, because of the digital age. But again, it aligns with the same heart of I need to prove to myself that I'm valuable, right? And we know through psychology, through social science, that again, you look at a childhood, like what was a relationship like with her dad, with her mom, was there a scar, something like that. Okay, and this is the order that God has given humanity to live by. Okay, but at the end of the day, you could see that really like leaked out in James and John, but we're talking about James today. So again, true greatness comes through sacrifice. Okay, so if you want to use Mother Teresa as like an illustration of like combating this, of like a woman that really lived her life in like the poorest of the poor in Calcutta, India, and she didn't receive her Nobel Peace Prize till 91. So again, this is what true greatness looks like to Jesus, right? You give yourself over. Okay, so James shows that this thirst for honor, again, it's human. He's being human, kind of what you were saying, Danny, right? But in Christ's kingdom, honor is given to those who humble themselves. Okay, greatness is not grasped through titles or thrones, but again, it's through the cross. Remember Jesus in John chapter 13, where he washes the disciples' feet, right? He does acts of service, but again, this is true honor. Okay. Let's go to Luke. Let's all go to Luke chapter 9. Luke chapter 9, and let's read 51 to 56. Luke chapter 9, verse 51 to 56. Luke chapter
when the
9.
days were near for him to be taken up, he set his face to go to Jerusalem. And he sent messengers ahead of him, who went and entered a village in Samaritans to make preparation for him. But the people did not receive him, because his face was set toward Jerusalem. And when his disciples James and John saw it, they said, Lord, do you want us to tell fire to come down from heaven to consume them? But he turned and rebuked them, and they went on to another village. Where did you say to go to? When?
56. You finished it.
Okay.
All right. So this is another famous passage of James and John. So we have the plea for honor. Okay. We have the plea for honor in Mark 10, and then now we have the I guess if you want to say anger, what they're known for. But remember, what's their nickname again? Their nickname are Sons of
Thunder.
Okay. And this is where an illustration comes about. Okay. So here we have Jesus going to Jerusalem, and then he encounters some Samaritans. And the mindset of a Jew at the time were, again, the Messiah will save who? The Jews. Okay. Who are the Samaritans?
They're a mixed breed with Jews
and the northern tribes. So remember, there's the kingdom of Israel, okay, and there's there's Saul, David, Solomon, and then there was a split with Rehoboam and Jeroboam, and that split the north and the south. The 10 tribes in the north, 2 tribes in the south, Judah and Benjamin. And what happened was that the northern tribe, they were wiped out in 722 by the Assyrians, and then the southern were wiped out in 586 by the Babylonians, that we studied on King Nebuchadnezzar. Now, in the northern, what happened was that there was mixed breeding going on, okay? And what happened to the Samaritans, that they were part Jew, but they were part something else, Assyrian. And what happened was that not only were they mixed, it's not necessarily that, it's the fact that they mixed their religious stances too. So they were kind of pagans at this point. Okay? And Jews, by the time it's the first century, so remember, that's 722. That's 700 years before this time here. So remember, we studied before was that when it came to the 12 tribes, is that by the time of the first century, there were no tribes to be identified other than Judah, other than Benjamin. Remember, Paul says, I'm a Benjamite. And then the Levites. Only those 3 tribes were able to be identified by the first century. Okay? So imagine today, there's no way you can identify Dan or Reuben or all that. So they were looked down upon, and they weren't considered part of the kingdom. Okay, we know this from what? Remember the woman at the well in John 4, Samaritan woman. Again, it's they were looked down upon by the Jews, and we can see that here. But remember, it's like Christ here is now going towards the Samaritans, and the Gentiles, and to a Jewish mind, especially someone that is considered the Messiah, this is kind of absurd to them. Okay. But notice the response, though. What do they say? In verse 54, and when his disciples, James and John, saw it, they said, Lord, do you want us to tell fire to come down from heaven to consume them, to kill them, essentially? Okay? Well, where do you think that came from? Why'd they say that?
like
Do you want to see the power of God or be a part of the power of God from the things that God did before, God the Father? I mean, isn't that where it came from?
Yeah, like
they did earlier, it's the same thing.
What's that, Peter?
You seeking significance. Once it was through elevation, through position,
Yeah.
next to Jesus. Next time it's, hey, we want to do something visceral, hardcore.
This
It's funny because those two guys are kind of both considered to be nerds.
sorry, Peter.
Both of those two individuals are sort of the nerds of the group.
Yeah,
They're not the visceral ones. Peter is.
yeah,
But so the nerds want to become really significant. They actually feel small.
They thought they were working for the Department of War.
the what? What was it?
Peter X, Kevin. Calm down, man. Calm up, dude.
No, I'm just kidding.
Well, just the idea, the idea of fire coming down from heaven. Does that ring a bell anywhere in the Bible?
Yeah, it's just Elijah.
Sodom and Gomorrah. What else? Elijah.
Elijah.
So in 2 Kings, where Elijah calls down fire from heaven, so it happened multiple times with Elijah, right? He calls fire from heaven, and he on the soldiers who are sent to arrest him, and fire comes down. Fire comes down from heaven in 2 Kings 17, right, where the prophets in Baal. I mean, that was the whole concept of it. Remember, the whole concept was there's Elijah and there's 450 prophets of Baal, and they got wood and they put it in water, and they says, who can light this on fire from heaven, right? And then in chapter 1 was about he actually did it on people. So it was like a Gandalf kind of move right here. And like you wonder, when, remember, they saw Elijah in person, or the transfiguration. So I'm not saying that this is where it's coming from, but again, we're taking the whole Bible and getting where did they get this idea from, right? But most likely it could have come from this concept of Sodom and Gomorrah, or most likely Elijah, right? Fire from heaven. But
Maybe it's not like judgment on God, but they wanted to see God move. They really did. They want to see him do something.
Yeah, I think all of us want to see that, and I think in I don't know, this is just my experience. Like, I'm speaking anecdotally, and I kind of see it with a lot of young people. Is like like when you come to faith, it's a lot of people, they want to see like signs, wonders, miracles, right? Right away. And then what happens in adulthood? You go through things, and then now you're more like practical in your faith. Now you just want to live in private. You want to live a good life. You want to live a virtuous, Christ-like life. When you stop caring about that. But I think it could have been zeal at first that they had. But again, the title, Sons of Thunder.
I get a question.
Yeah, Danny.
If I may. Jonah, I mean, it wasn't Jonah kind of bum tripped? They said, hey, they were forgiven. And Jonah kind of represented God too, saying, hey, man, you said you were going to do this. Why don't you do it? But they repented. It's like, you get a little bit of authority from the big guy. That's the way I see it.
Yeah. Well, what was your point about Jonah, though?
Well, didn't he warned them that they were going to be destroyed, correct, if they didn't repent?
Yes.
But they did repent, and he was kind of whining about it, wasn't he?
Yeah, he whined because he did not like the Ninevites. So
Right.
it was racial, yeah.
Right, it was out of his own power. It was out of his own thing, his representing God. It's like, it's my big brother's going to kick your ass,
Yeah.
if you don't stop this kind of thing. It's just the kind of way I see it.
Yeah.
It's more like two guys walking around with Elon Musk, and then thinking that they're all big because has a ton of money, almost $1 trillion, and then saying, "Hey, Elon, do you want us to go?" It's just like vibing off of someone else's like authority and power, and what they truly hold, and they hold it with restraint and with wisdom and honor, and these guys are like two pre-adolescent guys thinking like, oh, so do you want us to send fire from heaven? I mean, it just sounds so stupid. Like, it just sounds like an immature, like, you know, someone with like a lack of discernment, you know, on what to do. It's just someone with a poor planning skills, and you know, they need to follow a leader because they have no leadership skills in of themselves unless God gives it to them.
Well, practical question here is, could they even have done that? Like, you don't really hear of these signs and wonders and miracles of the disciples around this time, right? You hear it after, like the Book of Acts, right? So a part of me is saying, is this just talk? You know, because they do not understand the kingdom at this point at all. Yeah, that's why they said it, because they don't get it, right? Because they're thinking racial, just the Jews, right? But again, it's not tribal here. For them, it's tribal animosity, Jew versus Samaritan. Okay, so the mission is they don't get the mission. Okay, Jesus' purpose was to save, not to destroy. Okay, it was to save humanity from themselves against the wrath of God, essentially. Okay, so again, there's you kind of see the mission of Christ really for all people, right? So if you even think of it, like look at what Jesus did with the Samaritans. It's remember Acts 1:8, from Judea to Samaria, right? So, and then we have Luke chapter 15. What was it? The parable of the good Samaritan, right? So again, Jesus kind of like reassures that, hey, it doesn't have to be this way with the Samaritans. Okay, and what we could see is, I guess, righteous anger versus sinful anger here, right? Righteous anger is toward injustice, right? False religion or exploitation. And then we know that sinful anger is self-centered indignation. Okay, a desire for a revenge or status, or again tribal here, and this is kind of what we see here. So a couple of passages I want to read in regards to the anger is Ephesians 4:26-27. Be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger. Okay, and then James 1:19-20 says, be quick to anger. Be quick to anger. It does not produce the righteousness of God. Okay, and one more is Matthew 5:44 is what? Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. So again, it's Jesus completely changed the mindset that people had, especially from the Jews towards the Samaritans. Remember the woman at the well? Remember that? She's just a woman. She's a woman. She's a Samaritan woman, right? And again, Jesus flipped the script in regards to this. Okay.
Is this funny, like how Jesus goes all around with all these different stories, but it's just like us, and I feel like we were caught in a moment where we, you know, did the same thing, but just maybe a different scenario, you know?
Yeah.
It is comical, but then it's like telling, you know, like this is what people do, you know?
Yeah. You know, and we have to define our anger. Like we need to get specific. Like I guess there's anger when it comes to being in a nation. You know, you want justice because of crime. You know, I don't know if you've seen some murders that have happened, like, you know, recently, like Charlie Kirk or Irina Zarutska, the girl from Ukraine, like versus like an anger because you believe in your kingdom, right? Which is with James and John, right? And that's kind of what Jesus kind of realigning themselves as far as like, hey, there's a different, greater kingdom here. Okay. Everyone can see my photo still. Is everything good? Because people call and I just want to. All right. Now, these are the main two passages where you see James, really, like that honor one and Sons of Thunder one. Now, his death. Okay, his death. or what happened after after Jesus ascended. So when it came to Peter, there was a lot of rich passages, and we know a lot of history. Now, James, the son of Zebedee, there's not much as far as in the book of Acts, but there is. Okay, I want all of us to turn to Acts chapter 12 right now. Acts chapter 12. And if someone could read verse 1 and 2. I'm going to use a restroom really quick, okay? But let's all turn to Acts chapter 12, okay? One sec.
What?
12:1.
One,
12:1. About the time Herod the king laid violent hands on some who belonged to the church, he killed James, the brother of John, with the sword. When he saw that it pleased the Jews, he proceeded to arrest Peter also. This was during the days of unleavened bread. 1 to what did you say?
1 to 2. 1 to 2.
1 to 7?
No, 1 to 2. Just Acts 12, 1 to 2.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. So here again, this is the only time where you have one of the apostles of Christ, their martyrdom being documented in the Bible. All of them were martyred other than John, okay, the brother of James, but this is the only one that's documented in the Bible. So essentially, this is in the year 44 AD, so 14 years after, 11 years after the ascension of Christ. So somewhat early, 11 years after, but this is the first one after, the ascension of Christ. But again, he was beheaded, okay, and being beheaded in Jewish culture is, I think in humanity in general, is such a degrading form of death, right? This is why it is such a common, it's like shameful. You see someone's head, clothes, just the graphic and everything like that, especially to a Jew, okay? Now, he was martyred. He had his head cut off under Herod Agrippa. Now, Herod Agrippa was the grandson of Herod the Great. So when you see in Matthew chapter 1 and 2, remember there was Herod that wanted to kill Jesus? That was his grandfather. So there was Herod the Great, and he was the builder. Okay, if you go to Israel, a lot of his buildings are still there. Beautiful. And then and after he had a son, and he executed his son because he was paranoid that he wanted to take the throne, him and his brother. But his son had another son, and that was Herod Agrippa the First, which is this Herod right here. So again, this is the grandson of Herod the Great. Okay, and through around this time he rose in his political ranks in the Roman Empire and status. Okay, so he ruled starting around like 37 AD. Okay, so again, the essence of the Herods was to have a good relationship with the Jews and the Romans. It was kind of like the middleman. Okay, so this is in 44 AD, and we know that again he beheaded James, and as I mentioned, it's a very degrading form of death at this time. Okay, Eusebius, who is a church father, confirms this. Eusebius, he writes in this is around the early 4th century, so 311 AD. He says this during the time of Constantine the Great. He says, James, the brother of John, was killed by the sword on the command of King Herod, who wished to please the Jews. Okay. So again, remember this. Remember that passage we talked about in Mark chapter 10? Mark chapter 10, verse 39. But Jesus said, you will drink the cup I drink, and with baptism I will be I am baptized, you will be baptized. So remember, back to Danny, your point was that they're asking for a sense of honor. He's like, all right, well, are you willing to drink this cup? Right? And essentially, there's a fulfillment from James in particular, because he was able to be persecuted. Okay? So, James, again, was executed under Herod Agrippa, King Herod, by beheading. And tradition, this is not the Bible. Some traditions believe that the executioner here in Acts chapter 12 eventually converted because he saw the faith of James. So he was deeply moved by courage. So Eusebius also mentions many who saw the steadfastness of James glorified God and embraced the faith, even the cost of their own lives. And the tradition goes that it was the executioner that was moved after he cut his head off, that he was killed himself. Okay, I can't, again, we don't know this from the Bible, but it's tradition that says the executioner, after he killed James, was moved by faith and he was actually executed himself. Okay, and I think you could see, I've never felt this, I've never witnessed this in my entire life, but the death of Charlie Kirk, to me, he's a martyr. I think he died for what he believed. That's the only reason I can think of, like, why someone would kill him. And you can view him as a political figure, but no. Again, when people view politics as politics, they don't really know what they're talking about. I'm just laying that out there. Politics is in conjunction to anthropology. What is the state of man? Anthropology is in conjunction to theology. Where does man come from? What's the state? Right? So, and Charlie Kirk saw that. He knew that. Okay, but again, regardless, there is such a powerful influence when someone is publicly executed for their faith. Okay? Peter, Paul, Ignatius of Antioch. And Ignatius of Antioch is a disciple of John, who was fed to lions publicly. And the Roman emperor at the time thought that he could eliminate Christianity by eliminating its leaders. It did the exact opposite. With Nero trying to kill Peter and Paul, Ignatius of Antioch, it spread. It spread like a wildfire, Christianity. And kind of like what I'm saying is, I've never seen this in my life, is that I've never seen someone get executed publicly on behalf of their faith with thousands of cell phones, right? High quality definition, and the impact that has had. Charlie Kirk's impact, right? You see T-shirts and hats and signs in Korea, in Japan, in all over Europe and Spain and England, right, with signs of Charlie Kirk's face, people saying, "I am Charlie Kirk," right? Because there's an identification. There's a move that people were so inspired by. Okay, and this is the essence of what persecution does, or martyrdom does. Okay, so again, the first martyr out of all the disciples was James, the son of Zebedee, and we have it here in Acts chapter 12. Okay, and later on in Acts chapter 12, the same Herod, you can see this in your Bibles from verse 20 to 25, eventually died. Why? Because he loved his own glory. Right, verse 22 of the same chapter, and the people were shouting, "The voice of a God, not a man." And immediately an angel of the Lord struck him down, because he did not give God the glory. And he was eaten by worms and breathed his last breath. Okay? So, again, he died eventually, okay, by the angel of the Lord. So, now, very interesting. Okay, now here, I want you guys to look at your phones, or the group chat. I want you to look at the photos that I sent. Okay. Now, if you look at all the photos, okay, what you see is I'm gonna look at them too. Sorry. So I'm talking to you guys on my phone right now, or just what you see is photos of Camino de San Diego. Okay, and this is Spain. Okay, it's a map of Spain, and it's you can see Portugal and just south of it. But this is just at the very tip of it is a pilgrimage. Many people have been doing since the 9th century. We know. Okay, the 9th century, during the medieval times, and there are multiple routes to this one church, the Cathedral of Camino de San Diego. And what we know from tradition is that after James, the son of Zebedee, was murdered, because of his faith, was that his disciples brought his body to Spain. So España at the time was, I guess, this is the Roman Empire. This is considered the end of the world. Okay, so you even look at it on the map, right by the ocean there. So this is a tradition that people have, is that again his body was brought there, and right now his relics are there. So his bones, if you look at the photos, just scroll through there again. When you see all those lines, there are multiple routes that people have as far as pilgrimages. So since the 9th century, people have been doing all these different types of pilgrimages from one place to another. But people just walk. They walk. They stay in hostels. People do missionary trips, and it's a spiritual. Some people do it yearly. They go to Spain and they do this. They do this journey yearly, and ultimately it leads to this church. Very beautiful church, by the way, as you could see, and you can see people there in front. And at the very essence of it, you can see the tomb right there, and what lies inside that tomb is the body, or now the relics of James, the son of Zebedee. Okay, and you can see people praying right before his body there. Okay, would love to go. By the way, would love to go one day, do this. So if you look at the photos too, that bust, that's not James. I apologize, because it looks like it's him because this is his head, but that's actually King Herod in the 1st century. Yeah.
The beard, wearing the red.
No, the beard is a photo of James, but then the bust is a 1st century one of King Herod Agrippa.
I got you.
Yeah.
I got you.
Okay. So Jerome, who wrote the Latin Vulgate in the 4th century, says the bones of the martyrs are treasured throughout the world, and the faithful may honor them and imitate their steadfastness. And the Catholic Church really implemented this, right? So they pride themselves of holding on to their relics for this so they can be honored. So again, people literally do this pilgrimage. Why? Specifically for James, the son of Zebedee, son of thunder. Okay. So let me read to you some church fathers about James, son of Zebedee. This is Papias. This is really early. This is 1st and 2nd century. It says James, the brother of John, was killed by the sword on the command of King Herod, who wished to please the Jews. And then you have Ignatius of Antioch. This is 110. It says James, the brother of John, was a pillar of the church, and his martyrdom was a testimony of the faith. So he was Ignatius of Antioch was a disciple of John, and he died in 110 AD, very early. And then you have Origen, who is 3rd to 4th century. So 3rd to 4th, so 184, really early. To 253, really early, says James and John were sons of thunder, for their spirit was fervent, their zeal, yet it was a zeal rightly directed by the Lord. And then you have Eusebius of Caesarea from 260 to 340, so 3rd, 4th century. Says James was martyred by Herod Agrippa I because becoming the first apostolic martyr. Okay, one more. Cyril of Jerusalem, fourth century, so 313, 386, really early still. Says James, the brother of John, was a member of the inner circle, and his zeal and courage were evident in his ministry. Okay, so that's some history to back it up. But again, what you see is again the Camino de Santiago of where his body is, and the kind of the honor that people do. This is why people go on that pilgrimage specifically. Okay. Any questions? No?
No. No.
All right. Well, we are at our hour mark.